Look, thank you ever so much for coming. I'm ever so thrilled to be here at the Royal Institution, especially for the fact that there's no football tonight, so otherwise you didn't go to the rugby, which is why there are so many of you here. Thank you all for giving up the rugby, which wasn't on anyway. So it's a great honour to be here at the Royal Institution. Here's some footage I shot down the Antarctic. I've been down there 3 times. This is at around midnight and everybody else in the ship was asleep, and I figured I can always sleep when I'm dead. So I stayed awake all alone and it was dead quiet there. And then I thought, oh, let's just see what happens if I go up to the bow of the ship and point the camera straight down. And there you can see me right at the bow of the ship. I'm over at that bit there, sticking my hands through the big hole. So the temperature is -10. It's midnight. It took me about 4 hours to get that shot. I'm kind of thinking that this sort of shot would be nice for a YouTube backdrop at some stage. Please get the manager to talk to me later. And then we started heading off into some ice. And another stage, we sort of were pushing through the ice for hours, sometimes for days. Sometimes we were in the position on various trips that we were almost stuck in the ice, and we were lucky enough not to get into trouble. Now, this sort of footage could have been taken a century ago using film instead of CCDs or CDMOS, or going down with a steamship instead of a diesel ship. But this sort of footage, this bit here, this is brand new. This is NASA footage flying over the Earth at 28,000 kilometres per hour, about 400 kilometres up, and whizzing around the Earth once every hour and a half, continuously inhabited since the 2nd of November, year 2000, and you can see auroras there, you can see the city lights. This is the world that we'll be growing into, the world that's so different from the past, and that's why I'm very honoured to be here at the Royal Institution to give you an insight into some of the essential background knowledge that you need. Now, of course, some of the essential background knowledge would be my next book, but that's not available yet, so that's impossible. However, how did I get to the stage where I am today writing books like this? Well, I started off as a young man with disarmingly high pants, and I have no idea why that lady is leaning to one side. Then I went through a stage as a milkshake philosopher, a flower-munching hippie. Then I went up to New Guinea for a few years and did research up there. Then I decided that the word had come upon me, I should become a part-time Jesus. And I thought that was a little bit too intense, so I thought I didn't go entirely light and shallow. And so I've had a fairly long education of 28 years, starting off in baby jail and working my way through kindergarten into high school as a physicist and working as such. And as a biomedical engineer, I designed and built a machine to pick up electrical signals off the human eyeball to diagnose certain types of eye disease, retinitis pigmentosa. 450 of you here tonight, 7 of you carry the gene for that, and we'll talk about that with CRISPR. Okay? And then I also studied medicine and have several non-degree years of science. I worked at the Kids Hospital in computer science, astrophysics, philosophy, and biomedical engineering and electrical engineering. But along the way, I've worked in I worked in many different jobs, including all of those. And Bo, who knows Bo Diddley? Anybody heard of him? I was his roadie for a few years in Australia. The high point. I value education so much so that I support American initiatives. And so they came out with these pencils saying, "Too cool to do drugs," which unfortunately when you sharpen them, just finishing off with drugs. Yeah, sure, they were recalled. So I come from the strange land down under. 80% is too dry to grow anything on. 40% is just straight desert by the definition of 200 millimetres of rain a year. Here you can see that the brown is the high altitude. We don't have much high altitude in Australia. Australia is so old that basically when Europeans come to Australia, they say, "That's not a mountain, that's just rubble." So it's all very low. It is large. It's roughly the same size as the United States of America and quite a bit larger than the United Kingdom. This is the four-wheel drive that we started off in. The family and I have spent some 20 years travelling through the Australian outback, test driving four-wheel drives. And here we are in the Finke River. where we got bogged. Fink River. Oldest river in the world, 150 years old. You can see we're way down, pulling out the chain to get us out. And in Australia, you might not realise this, but the rivers are upside down. The majority of the rivers are upside down with the sand on top and the water underneath. Dig down a metre or two and you find crystal clear water purified by flowing through hundreds of kilometres of sand. And over here we have the essentials we needed: solar cells, fuel. On our biggest trip we needed lots of fuel, 600 litres, and we also needed lots of nappies, this many nappies. And so this trip basically covered 2,000 kilometres, starting off in the middle of Australia, heading west for 1,000 kilometres, turning right, or as we Australians say, chucking a righty. Is that British? Yeah, okay. And then we went right for 1,000 kilometres. In that 2,000 kilometres, we saw only one group of travellers. We had to carry all of our own fuel, 600 litres, and we had to carry all of our own food. There were no shops, no signs of human habitation, only one bunch of travellers coming through. We didn't see anybody apart from that for an entire month. The Australian outback is red because rust, yes, huge mountains of iron ore, which then erode over the millennia, over the millions of years. And so in the rest of the world, if you bring in electric telegraph, you need two wires, one in and one out. In Australia, you only need one wire in, you just drop it into the ground, and the ground carries enough electricity to carry the signal back. So when we were heading north, 1,000 kilometres, there were one sand dune every 2 kilometres. So to get over a sand dune, you basically need a light vehicle. We weighed 5.25 tonne. You need a big engine. We had a tiny 3-litre petrol engine, but at least I could fix it because it was petrol, not diesel. And you need big balloon tyres without tread. We had aggressive rock tyres, 14 ply, because the only thing that's 2 ply in the Australian outback is toilet paper. That's how tough we are. And so we'd go running at the sand dune and get bogged, and then reverse down in our own wheel tracks and normally get over on the second or third go. The sand dunes had this peculiar soft quality, beautiful sand. Some of those plants had roots going down 20 metres. A plant this big, 20 metres, just to try and find some water. This is a plant called a honey grevillea, and close up you'll see that there are little transparent dots which happen to be dots of liquid honey, which I then put up to my face and then went, and there I am going, we're very corny glasses back then. We got our water. We drank 1.5 tonnes of water because the temperature was 48 in the daytime, dropping down. This is the bit where I'm telling you about myself before I get into the real show. We were dropping down to about 35 degrees at around 2 o'clock in the morning. And when we, in fact, took our daughter after 8 weeks, so there she was. She's a bit older now, but we took her into the desert when she was 12 weeks old and popped out a month later. And we went into a supermarket, and the temperature there was a nice, comfortable 30 degrees centigrade, and she went into total peripheral shutdown and turned purple on us because it was too cold. We got our water by drinking, finding it from a well. Sometimes it was beautifully clear. Sometimes it had dead birds, headless lizards, whatever it was. We drank it. And one time we threw down the bucket, and that's actually how we got our daughter. We found her. We drew her out of the water, and we thought that she was cute, so we thought we'd hang on to her with her intense blue eyes. On one of our other trips, we've spent 2 years in total in the Australian outback, covering 40,000 kilometres. We're at Shark Bay over on the left-hand side of Australia, and we saw these things. Now, you might think, that's just a rock. That is not a rock. That is a stromatolite. Microorganisms that have gathered themselves together and formed colonies, and then as the water flows in and out, they trap and they gather and they cement together any tiny bits of grains, and then they form themselves into what the fancy marine biologists call a layered biochemical accretionary structure. And that is the oldest living creature on Earth. Not that particular one, but they've got a genetic record going back to 3.5 billion years. That rock, so you walk on it and you think, sort of soft and squishy, and you're walking on what was there 3.5 billion years ago, or 6,000 years ago if you're a born-again, fundamentalist, gun-toting, redneck Christian from Texas. Okay, and then we saw these beautiful beaches, and you think, oh yeah, nice beach. By the way, you've got to have 2 spare tyres in the outback. And the beach is covered with these shells. 80 kilometres. Imagine just this totally isolated from everywhere. And you walk into the water and you see these dolphins and you think, oh, aren't they sweet? They love us. We love them. They're so lovely. Not in Australia. We know about dolphins. The bottom line is that everything in Australia will kill you. As you get in your rented car and leave the airport, poisonous snakes and spiders will crawl out of the air conditioning vents. Let me tell you, the drop bears, they're terrible. But there is another way around it, though. So with the dolphins, they're sort of beautiful and they love you, but no, they don't. They're killers. Like these guys. You see these off the coast of Australia. These are orcas, killer whales, leaping out of the water up to 10 metres long. This is actually on one of my Antarctic ventures, and we came across them, a line of them, a kilometre wide, 30 of them jumping out of the water, and you can see the weird track that they followed around. And here you can see them jumping out of the water, hurling their bodies out of the water. It takes a lot to throw a 10-ton body out of the water for a whole hour. And the fishermen, the sailors had never seen anything like this before, and they thought it was probably they were chasing something, maybe yellowfin tuna, and maybe this is some peculiar adaptation that they're more efficient at maintaining this high energy output for a shorter period of time because they'll be able to have a big feed at the end of it, and they're teaching the babies, now come along, you leap out and then you come back in again. So talking about dolphins, right? The dolphins, right? Now, they've been around for about 20 million years, and literally the word means a fish with a uterus, which, by the way, is my favourite organ. You can ask about that later. And also they were thought to bring good luck. The Encyclopedia Britannica says that they are friendly to humans, and I'm telling you that they're wrong. They are just another wild animal, and that smile, that's just a happy accident of anatomy, purely there by accident. So there's 4 major misconceptions about these guys. One, it just relates to the fact that they embrace us and give us love and goodwill. And if you go up to Byron Bay in the north coast of New South Wales, you'll hear people saying, you know, about time I did a bit of dolphin work, which basically means they go down to the beach and smoke a lot of dope and sort of absorb the love and the goodwill. It's a dangerous thing to do, and I'll explain why. There are 3 other main misconceptions. One, that they're inferior to us and we have to give them all the love, which is fair enough. We can give them love, no, that doesn't hurt. Or that they're actually equal to us, or that they are superior to us, some sort of ET, extraterrestrial genius, but with fins and no hands, who have got all sorts of knowledge to pass on to us. And, of course, you know the TV series about Flipper. They call him Flipper, faster than lightning. Nobody's faster than Flipper. Everybody loves Flipper. We know Flipper. He lives in a world. He does all these sort of good things, and the kids love him, and he's the greatest thing on earth. Okay. Then we get into severe drug work here. Here we got J.C. Lilly in the 1960s and 70s, who not only took probably his own body weight in acid, but also managed to get his ashes thrown into space. And he was a guy who thought that they were into telepathy and language. Lots of other people are into dolphins. John Denver's not here anymore, but he loved dolphins. The Red Hot Chili Peppers, they got their own song about him. Ash Grunwald, the Australian artist, he's great. A lot of people write songs about dolphins because they think that the dolphins love us and are friendly. But no, nothing in Australia is safe. This article here, interactions between the public. Oh, look, I'll just shorten it out for you. People have been seriously injured while trying to interact with wild dolphins. And dolphins have been known to bite, ram, and pull people under the water surface. And this one here is messy. Women and children abducted by a wild but sociable adult male bottlenose dolphin. And then aggression in the dolphins. They attack each other. They do sexual attacks. They're really mean and nasty. This book by the Australian Commonwealth Scientific Industrial Research Organisation, CSIRO, has a paper in there by Amy Samuels. Now, she's one of the top people in the world on dolphins. A review of the literature pertaining to swimming with wild dolphins. And basically, she looked at typical. This study looked at 29, but this is just typical of all of them. She's looking at 29 dolphins. One of them, fortuitously named Flipper, actually saved the life of a drowning boy. Wonderful, that proves it, right? No. 18 attacked humans and broke ribs and spleen, and 13 tried to love humans very much in a special way. Now, these dolphins, they range in size from quite small to fairly large, and they include the pilot whale and the killer whale. The killer whale is not a whale. The killer whale is actually a killer dolphin. But what happened was that the dolphins got together and they organised really good PR, and they said, look, just whenever you refer to them, call them a killer whale so that people will love us so we can go and attack humans. And you might have heard about things happening in Australia with the sharks. I think the sharks need to hire the same PR company. Okay, so that sort of gets we're almost got the introduction about me out of the way there. Now we'll move into the next stage, which is about how I'm not going to give you guys an exam. And the reason I'm not going to give you guys an exam is because I have too much respect for certain members of your family. I'm talking about the dead grandmother exam syndrome. And way back in time, Mike Adams of Connecticut realised that there was something going on. A student would say, look, I'm sorry, couldn't do the exam last Tuesday. My grandmother, she died. And he'd look at his watch, give sympathy for 5 minutes. 5 minutes and 1 second, he'd say, but I can give you a make-up exam next Tuesday. And quick as a flash, he'd say, oh, sorry, I've got another grandmother, she's dying next Tuesday as well. And so he realised that there were two major trends going on that he observed over the decades. The first trend relates to the grade of the student. Now, if you've got your A-grade students, they always do well. And you can see over there that if there's no exam coming, they've got 4 out of 8 grandmothers dying every year, which is your sort of natural background grandmotherly attrition rate. And should the exams come, well, the student gets stressed. They put the stress upon the parents who are too busy earning money, who then put onto the grandmother who promptly dies. And this doubles it to 9 out of every 100 grandmothers dying every year, which in these terrorist times is acceptable collateral damage, blue on green, friendly fire. We've all got to make sacrifices, especially the grandmothers. A bit more of a threat to the grandmothers are your C-grade students, but your major threat to the longevity of our beloved female geriatric relatives are our borderline pass-fail F-grade students, who out of every 100 grandmothers have 218 of them dying every year. Now, the second trend that's going on is how fast this is happening. And here you can see the rate relentlessly ramping upwards. And for some of the more mathematically inclined among you, you've already worked out in your own heads that that curve is described by that equation. And furthermore, you've already worked out, it's just obvious, that in 1 century from now, when your great-grandchildren go into an exam, by the mere act of walking into the exam, they will have killed 6.44 grandmothers per student per exam. Now, we've got to have solutions. We have 3 solutions because everything comes in threes. Like there's 3 sides to a triangle. And the country and western singers recognise that the calendar has got it wrong. There's only 3 days to the week, yesterday, today and tomorrow, each one worse than the one before it. And as Deborah mentioned, in 2002, the Australian government made me the Australian Father of the Year because I have 3 children, 1 of each sex. So the first solution is very straightforward. You simply stop giving exams. But where would you get your qualified scientists and taxi drivers and accountants and fire officers? The fabric of society would crumble. Now, a far more ingenious solution is that you allow to undergo higher education only those people who are already orphans. But if you actually look at the figures, there's not enough orphans to go around. You can make some more orphans by killing off some parents and grandparents, but that's exactly the situation you're trying to avoid. Now, the only honest and decent solution is that the students should lie to the families. Mum, Dad, I'm going to fight the war on terror. I'll be at this address for the next 4 years. Please send lots of money. Yours truly, child. Something like that. Okay, so that's got the introduction out of the way, okay? Now we'll head into the proper show with a question. I lied. I'm sorry, I said there wouldn't be any exam. Here's the first exam. What is this a map of? Anybody know what this is a map of? It is a map of the internet in 1969, the entire internet for the whole world. Now, over there on the left, you can see SRI, Stanford Research Institute. Any of you with a smartphone that's an Apple ever wondered why she has the name Siri? That's why. Siri. What is this? Second one. What is this a map of as well? The white countries, according to this book by Stuart Laycock, are all the countries that we didn't get around to invading. British invasions began a long time ago, back with Claudius Albinus, who tried to invade Gaul and lost. And then you had the British Empire, which covered a huge amount of the globe. But let's, for the sake of this book, all the countries we've ever invaded, and a few we never got around to, let's also include any British military presence anywhere, no matter how short a time, and normally there because of threat, of force or negotiation or payment or whatever. It turns out that the number 2 country in the world at invading other countries is France. And in a curious, I don't know what, it turns out that France has endured more invasions by the United Kingdom or the British than any other country on earth. The USA is making an honourable effort, but they're late starters. So far, they've only invaded once every 14 months of their 250-year reign. But then you look at this and you think, hang on, what's that little dot there in the middle of Europe, in Vatican City? They didn't invade Vatican City. Well, we were just there last week, and here's this magnificent statue. Beautiful. By the way, the bright thing at the bottom in the middle is the door that's open that normally isn't open. But it's of the Pope Alexander, and underneath him there's the Pope Alexander, and there's some angels underneath worshipping him and being nice to him. But notice the fine detail. Notice the arrows pointing to a skeleton. At the top, you see a hand, not an arm, just not an arm with flesh, just bones, holding something. And then you'll see, going down another arrow, you'll see the rib cage. Another arrow, you'll see the humerus, sorry, not the humerus, the radius and ulnar of the arm. And going down even further, you'll see a foot resting against the door. You don't see the face. The face is covered. But notice something else. Down the bottom right-hand corner, one of the angels, one of the worshippers, has a foot on the globe of the world. And what is that foot on? The United Kingdom. At that time, the Catholic Church didn't particularly like what the Britons were doing, and so that was put into the contract for the statue. And I think that if oil is ever discovered under the Vatican, that is reasonable grounds for sending an expeditionary force to visit the Vatican. I don't know. Now, we all have our problems. Look, I think we should just put that aside and never even think about it again. Make it blind to us, and we all have our blind spots. The Americans have their blind spots. Now, when I say American blind spots, this is only because, in this next section, that we have the figures for America. I don't know what they are for the United Kingdom, for Australia, for Lithuania. So let's not pick on the Americans, right? 4% of Americans deny that smoking causes cancer. 6% deny that if you have a mental disorder, that in any way there is anything physical, electrical, hormonal, chemical going on in your brain, that basically you're just weak or you've been taken over by the devil and you should just snap yourself out of it. 8%, for some unknown reason, have got something against DNA. I don't know why. 15% deny that childhood vaccines work. 25%, this is truly astonishing. This study has been done by Science magazine over the last 40 years, and it varies between about 22% to 28%. 25% of Americans deny that the Earth goes around the sun. 40% deny that global warming exists, that we caused it, that it'll be expensive to fix. They also deny that the world is older than 10,000 years, that evolution exists, even though we have the antibiotics coming through not quite as fast as the bacteria evolve against them. And they also deny that radiocarbon dating is accurate. And 51% deny that the Big Bang ever happened. So if we're living in a world like this, and this is you and me and the people around us and the deliberate disinformation, there is certain essential knowledge that you need to be able to survive in this world. And you all know the biggest event, the biggest scientific, philosophical event of the year 2015. And we need the knowledge I'm going to give you to help you deal with that event. Woke up this morning and my newsfeed was a mess. Everybody's talking about the colour of the dress. Where'd she get it from? Was it blue? Was the colour? Okay, there you go. That's enough. Now, I'm not talking about this dress. This particular blue dress, all this dress did was Nellie bring down the President of the United States. Kids, if you don't know about this, do ask your parents. And especially ask them, Father, Mother dear, why was the dress stored in the freezer? Moving right along to the dress. Okay, question from the audience. No moral values associated. Who sees the dress as blue? Show of hands, right. Now, who sees the dress as white, please? Yes. Same dress, I didn't touch anything. Okay, but now, the people who saw it as white, you see it as blue. And now you see it as blue. And there it is, white again. What's going on? Well, basically, it's a visual illusion. How many lumps of, which, by the way, should be thought of as an inability of the brain to deal with reality. So here's some lumps of 4B2, as they called it in the pre-metric times. How many lumps of 4B2 are lying on the ground there? Yeah, there's 4 lumps of 4B2. What about over here? How many lumps of 4B2 are lying down on the ground? 3, yeah, there's 3 lumps of 4B2, aren't there? Right, yeah, okay. Let's get into it then. So there was a wedding in the United Kingdom, and somebody married somebody, and marriages are wonderful. And the mother of the bride bought this dress from Roman Originals, yep. And then, there it is. And you can see quite clearly that the dress is advertised as blue. And then, this is very disturbing. They put an apostrophe in on the word "it's" that should not have been there. Yeah, I just had to get that off my chest. Moving right along, the mother then posted the photograph, the famous photograph, and then there was a bit of a dispute about the colour, but the wedding was coming and people thought that was more important, so they forgot about it until this person got involved. Now, this is Caitlin, and she was a singer and guitarist with the band that was playing at the wedding, and she'd look at it and sometimes she'd go, blue, white, blue. By the way, is there anybody in the audience who, depending on the circumstances, can see it as both blue and white? Right. The rest of us should follow them, sit at their feet, give them all of our money and worship them, for they are the new generation. They have secret knowledge. So the blue dress was messing with her head. And she posted it onto Tumblr, and then shortly it went on to BuzzFeed. Onto Tumblr, this is the original snapshot of it going onto Tumblr. And then with BuzzFeed, at one stage, over 2/3 people were simultaneously watching it, and they had to employ, over the period of time that it became a phenomenon and went away, many extra teams of people to sell advertising over that period of time. They then called in the top electro-neurophysicist in the world, and Tay said that she was scared and confused, and it was obviously blue and black. Now, the essence of science is you have peer review. So, of course, they got the other royalty in, the Kardashians, and Kim and Kanye disagreed with each other. So, I'll try and explain it to you. There's some good articles in the Scientific American and Scientific American Mind. It's a great illusion. It's a 6-part answer I'll be giving you. 5 parts we definitely have some sort of answer on. 1 part we definitely don't know, but I'll give you a hint. It's a visual illusion, or the brain can't, and shadows. Combination of that. Shadows. Now, I'm going to show you here a circle, which is incomplete. There's some pinky purpley dots. What I'd like you to do is follow the dot as it goes around the circle in a clockwise direction. Follow the moving dot, okay? I want you to follow the moving dot. Here we go. Follow the moving dot. I'll have a little drink of water now. Follow the moving dot. Yum. Now I want you to shift your focus to the cross in the middle. Who saw a change in colour? Yeah, blue, green. Okay, next one. So, can you count the dots there? Now, Deborah has said that we're going to give away a prize of a BMW, a house in London, and the Galapagos Islands to anybody who can count the dots. No. Here's another visual illusion. Here you can obviously see that there's a centre point and there's a bunch of colours coming out. If you look at the top left, you can see that there's a sort of a bluey spirally thing, and then there's a reddy spirally thing and a greeny spirally thing, kind of. Okay, let's go in close. Now notice this. The bluey one has got purple stripes across it. And then there's the orangey reddy one, and then there's a greeny one, which has got orange stripes. I am now going to remove all the orange and purpley off the screen. They're the same colour. So the first part of the answer is that the dress really is blue. Yes, the dress, it really is blue. And if you go into Photoshop and do colour picking, you can see, depending on where you pick, that there's blue here and blue there and blue there. It is definitely really blue, especially if you get it by itself. Second part of the answer. Our senses are good at relative measurements. If I give you 2 weights that are 10% different, this is called Weber's law in psychology, you can pick the difference. Less than 10%? No. More than 10%? Yes. Our senses are lousy at absolute measurements. If I give you a weight, you can't say, oh, obviously that's 4.4 kilograms. You'll say, oh, it's heavy, and it's heavier than that weight, and that's about it. And this inability to be precise with absolute measurements follows with smell and vision. And here's an example. Here you see 2 dogs. Observe that dogs have tails. In front of the tails, they have their back. Look at their back. Now, I'm going to remove everything except the section of the dog's back in front of the hole in their tail. Same colour. How come? Blue at the bottom, fading to green at the top. Here is what claims to be a Rubik's Cube, but it can't be because it has 5 on a side. But let's have a look at the centre points and introduce you to the concept of colour constancy. This is essential for understanding what's going on. See the 2 different centre dots, which are of different colour? Whoa! Different colour. Let's just do that again. Just that little bit. Oh, let's just do that on a loop, shall we? Oh, it's orange. It's brown. It's orange. It's brown. Okay. Here's another example, a chessboard. You can see you have a chessboard. And in one corner, there is it's not quite a cylinder, it's actually a truncated cone, but we'll call it a cylinder. You have a truncated cone, a cylinder, a green thing, and it's throwing a shadow. There's obviously a light behind it. You're throwing a shadow onto the board. And you have 2 squares, A and B. Very obviously different colours, aren't they? No, they're the same. So, colour constancy. What is this thing called colour constancy? It is essential for us to survive because you want your food to be findable. You want your red apple to always look the same, whether it's in bright sunlight or in murky shade at twilight and everything in between. You want to be able to find your food. And so you have this thing called colour constancy where you compensate for the outside world. If you are to go into a nightclub which has red lights, you will see a sheet of paper which is really red because it's reflecting the red light. You'll see it as white. Colour constancy. So what you perceive, what your brain perceives of this crazy outside world around us is a combination of the true colour of the object that exists in front of you plus the colours or shades right next to it. Remember the spiral? Plus the overall ambient lighting. Is it in sunlight or is it in shadow? And now we're getting there. By an amazing coincidence, this dress was the most beautiful visual illusion of the year 2015. There's no flesh to do a comparison with. There's no other dresses. And so your brain says, here's a dress, there's light flaring at me, I must do colour constancy. Question your brain does without you even thinking about it. Is the dress lit from the front or is it lit from the back? And if it's lit from the back, then the front is in shadow. Here you can see that obviously, because of that white unfocused band on the right, obviously the person is standing against a window and obviously the sunlight is bright outside, so obviously the front of the dress is in shadow. If the front of the dress is in shadow, you then apply colour constancy and then you remove the blue colour and you see the dress as white. But, it's not just a dress. It's a dress with a nifty little bolero jacket. And wait for it, even more. The bolero jacket has what the neuroscientists call specularities, what you and I would call reflections. You see those reflections and automatically your brain says, reflection. Therefore, the dress is lit from the front. Because the dress is lit from the front, you then go into the colour constancy. You do not remove the blue hue. You see the dress as blue. That's it. If you perceive it in shadow, you perceive it as lit, white, blue. Part 6, we do not understand. We do not know why you see the dress as blue, as front lit or back lit. It's not related to your emotional intelligence or whether you had a bad cup of tea with tea bag instead of leaves or anything like that. But there's another trick that was thrown in there. The mother of the bride wore the dress. That wasn't revealed to us at the beginning. If in our culture here, in this country right now, on average, the bride will wear a white dress and nobody else will wear white. And if it was said to us that the mother of the bride was wearing this dress, you would say, okay, it's not a white dress. And that would just sort of tip you over the other way. Now, what happens at these things? You drink alcohol. And alcohol is an incredibly important part of our culture. And yet we do not know how to use alcohol. Our society is drenched in alcohol, and yet we don't understand the science of it. And I recognised this for the first time when I taught the family how to gate crash a party by Dickie. You know Dickie? Richard Branson? Dickie? I've done 2 gigs with, I just name dropping there. So we're at a hotel. I taught the family how to gatecrasher party. So what you do is you walk slowly towards the nearest rent-a-cop. You don't try to avoid them. You walk slowly towards them, and as you walk slowly towards them, you make eye contact, and you say no verbs, only a noun. Family. Just say family. If they say, are you family? You say, well, no, you busted me on that one, man. We're not. We've got to go. And then they just let you through. And we went there, and he's launching a multi-billion-dollar phone network in India, and he did a stunt, and he got caught, and they had to get paratroopers in, and it was a big thing, and it was a huge thing, multi-billion dollars, and the amount of alcohol there was zero. I suddenly realised there's something wrong. There was no alcohol. And yet we live in a society where alcohol is everywhere, and we do not know that diet drinks make you drunker. Who knows that? Put your hands up. Anybody know that? How can we... One, thank you for reading my 34th book, sir. Right. Rum and diet cola, rum and regular cola. Same amount of alcohol, but the diet drink gets you drunker. D for diet, D for drunker. This is not an invitation to go for diet drinks because bad things can happen, and we won't even talk about that. And why does it happen? Because different amounts of energy. How did I find this out? Because I read this paper here called Artificially Sweetened versus Regular Mixes Increase Gastric Emptying. Let's go into it. Okay, so you're looking at 3 rum and diet colas, and they've got 225 calories, all in the alcohol, none of it in the sugar. There is no sugar. And it doesn't cause cancer either, the aspartame or whatever it is. But if you have 3 rum and regular colas with sugar, on average you'll have 65 grams of sugar, which by a coincidence is the average world daily consumption of sugar, and therefore you end up with double the amount of calories. The rum and regular cola has double the amount of calories. Now this is something I did not know when I went through medical school. They did not teach me this. Your stomach pushes the food through into the next part of the intestine at a fixed rate of around 2 to 3 calories a minute. So the mix of alcohol changes what happens to the alcohol. So if you've got a longer stay of the food in your stomach, the alcohol with sugar, it stays in your stomach longer, the regular sugar, and then you end up with the alcohol being destroyed by the enzymes and acid in the stomach. And there's less alcohol to go through into the small intestine and be absorbed. And this is what happens. Here you have the blood alcohol level on the left going up and the minutes on the right. If you have 3 rum and regular colas, your blood alcohol level will go to 0.03. If you have 3 rum and diet colas, it'll go to above 0.05. You'll end up getting busted by the police. You'll go to jail. You'll get very friendly with your cellmate. You'll end up having love and hate tattooed on your knuckles. And then end up several years later outside my daughter's high school selling methamphetamine off the back of a Harley with your big fat beer gut and a big beer, all because you didn't know that diet drinks make you drunker. And yet we live in a society where alcohol as a drug is accepted, and we do not teach this to the kids. And this is part of the cover-up that's going through our society, and I'll deal with that. Because the trouble with the alcohol, not the trouble, but the beauty of it, is that it makes you both more attractive in your own mind and more attracted, you think. And so you could end up being friendly to somebody. And I read about this in a paper in Nature. I thought, wow, look at that. I looked at the title. Oh my heavens, what on earth is this title about? Adult persistence of head-turning asymmetry, what on earth is that about? And then a neonatal right-sided preference. Okay, I'll take you through this. Neonatal means around the time of birth, immediately after birth, or before birth. It's hard to check it out before birth, but I'll tell you the experiment. You come up to a baby that has just been born or hasn't been born, and then you make a loud noise. And 90% of the time, the baby will do this. Turn their head to the right. And 10% of the time, the baby will do that. Turn their head to the left. This is the neonatal right side preference. And then it says, makes a surprising romantic reappearance later in life. Oh, they kiss each other and they turn their head to the right. Now, this paper here was written by Ona Göttingen, a very deep guy. With regard to kissing, kissing goes back a long way. the early Christians, there weren't too many of them, and so every time they met, they kissed, just in case. People kiss at weddings. Some societies don't kiss at all. In Southeast India, the way they kiss is they put their nose up to the other person's cheek and go, that's the kiss. There are crimes of kissing. In Indiana, a man with a mustache cannot kiss humans. In Hartford, you cannot kiss your wife on a Sunday. Naples, you get killed for kissing. And the author of this paper, Ona Göttingen, he observed kissing couples. This guy is deep. He was the guy who discovered that birds find threat with one eyeball and food with the other eyeball. And if you read The Guardian, you'll read about how he was the guy who came across this language in Turkey, where they communicate entirely by whistling. And they did fMRI scans and found that the part of the brain related to music was larger. So he was good at doing rigorous science. He wasn't just the guy in the brown raincoat taking notes in the corner. He ended up getting stuck at an airport for a bunch of hours, and so rather than wasting his time, he sort of looked around. He suddenly noticed that people coming up and tilting their heads to the right. Now, he did the right thing. He sort of, okay, are they pulling any luggage which is sort of hold them to one side, so they have to kiss this way, and there definitely had to be lip-to-lip contact, and of course they had to be trying to kiss, not a sort of accidental trip, oh that counts as a kiss, no, and an obvious direction of tilting, like so. And he found that you get twice as many turning your head to the right as to the left. But why? Why on earth do we kiss? Obviously, it's related in early days to breastfeeding, which besides all of the emotional side, gives you food. Come here, milk machine, give me food. And on your lips are nerve endings, which give you the standard stuff of hot and cold, but also pleasure. So you sort of get, maybe in some societies, imbued into that. And secondly, you kissing babies, you chew the food. You can't say, hey, baby, chew on this dinosaur meat, and they don't have any teeth, so you chew it yourself and then sort of squirt into their mouth before we had baby food. And then thirdly, you're close enough to think, why are you wearing cheap Tesco perfume, which you weren't wearing before you went out? And also you can pick up the immune system of another person. If they've got a different immune system, you'll find them more attractive for various reasons. And of course the hippies believe that the soul lives in the mouth, so you fuse the breath and soul. The bottom line is we don't know why we kiss, but we do know this. We know that we kiss wrongly. Suppose you've got 3 males. 1, 2, 3. 2 of them will tip their heads to the right. Right. 1 will tip the head to the left. You match them up with 3 females. 2 will tip the head to the right, 1 to the left. And there you see 4 green Ys. They come in for that first tremulous kiss. They both tip their heads to the right. Perfect kiss. 1 out of 9 is a left-left interaction. Beautiful kiss. 4 out of 9 are this terrible situation, possibly soul-destroying to their entire psyche for the rest of their lives, where they come in, they bang foreheads, and the person they love they can't communicate with, they run off awkward and worried and embarrassed. And the trouble is that this is a terrible situation in our society, where the people are not taught how to kiss in primary school, in high school. No, come on now. This is serious. We have got a cover-up, and this cover-up goes beyond the Secretary of State for Education. It goes right to the top, to the people who really run this country. And talking of cover-ups, the one with carrots. Who knows about that one? Who has heard the story that if you don't eat carrots, you'll go blind? Yes. And there is, like in all good myths, a small element of truth. Yes, there is a chemical in carrots called vitamin A, and it gets turned into another chemical called retinal in the eyeball, and then when light lands on it, you get electricity, which gives you this glorious 3D colour vision thing. But if you are low in vitamin A, long before you've lost your vision, your skin has gone to lunch, your immune system has gone to lunch. You get vitamin A from these foods, except eyeballs, don't eat eyeballs. And in fact, you only truly get vitamin A from fish and from liver. There's no vitamin A in plants. However, there is a chemical called carotene, and your liver converts it into vitamin A1 and A2. And the way I came across this story was by reading your fabulous BBC about how Mr. Cat's Eyes helped change the world. We are talking about the terrible Battle of Britain and how close it all came, reported in the New York Times. And this I find very disturbing. The brave British aviators were sent out in their aeroplanes. Why did the RAF paint targets on the side? My God, didn't anybody tell them? Arguing against this, nevertheless, John Cunningham became the first person to shoot down an enemy plane using radar. Now, what is radar? Radar is just radio, but instead of broadcasting out in all directions, you broadcast it out in a dish. And so it goes in a particular direction, and then you switch off your broadcaster, and then you listen. And you wait for an echo to come back. And if the echo takes a long time to come back, the plane is a long way away. If the echo happens only when you're pointing the dish in that direction, well, then that is where the plane is. Very simple in principle, very difficult to execute. All the developed countries were working on radar at the beginning of the Second World War, but only one, the United Kingdom, actually had a functioning and secret radar system. This is the only tower left standing. There were a few more, this is how they looked in the war, run by teams of women, putting a ring of confidence around the United Kingdom that the Nazis did not know about. And the Battle of Britain was won only because of carrots. This is a Nazi reconnaissance photograph, cliffs of Dover. And there you can see the tower. There were less than 100 of them. Sorry, fewer than 100. Oh, my God. Got to get your apostrophes right. So, if they had bombed the fewer than 100 towers, Britain would have lost this Battle of Britain. There would have been a whole different world play. The United States might have stayed neutral. Whole different thing, and it didn't happen because of carrots. And it says here in the article, to cover up the radar from the Germans, the pilots were being praised for being able to see in the dark, and the government said it was because the carrots were rich in vitamin A, and you had farmers bringing carrots, bags of carrots, to the RAF, the brave people with their short lifespans, so they could see better. Now, obviously, you can see a flaw in my story. I'm asking you to believe that the government would lie to us. And that, of course, is totally impossible. So we're talking about this secret thing called radar. Not secret anymore. My 5-year-old Japanese hybrid has got radar. And this gets us on to the topic of car hacking. Paper here, automotive attack surfaces. What are they talking about? Well, your typical modern car has between 50 and 200 computers running 50 million lines of code, which is roughly 3 times more than it takes to run an Airbus 380 or a Boeing 777. A car is no longer just a structure of metal and glass. Many modern cars have got their own SIM card, and if you get yourself a flat tyre, you just simply can use that. The car, via its own SIM card, separate from the one you have in your phone, just in the car, it can form around it your own Wi-Fi network. So you just get in the car and you've got your Wi-Fi network. And you get a flat tyre, you press a button, and then suddenly you find yourself talking to a human. Or the other side, suppose that they know at Mothership that your car has had the airbags deploy and the GPS is no longer moving. You've probably had a collision, and they'll try to ring you. By the way, this points out another issue, that the microphone is always on. And anybody over the age of 20, you're in the last generation to have known privacy. Everybody else, there ain't no privacy. And moving right along, digital radio. The car has got a digital radio, not analog. So all of these are attack surfaces to get into the car and do bad things. Bad things can be put into the CD that you buy and into the MPEGs, the music. How do you know as you're driving down the road, and suddenly the car says your right front tyre is low? Because there's a Bluetooth transmitter that transmits, and that transmitter is not secured, and that transmitter is hackable. In this paper, in 2011, it took them about 36 hours, but they were able to drive down the highway, parallel to another car, in 2011, and hack into the Bluetooth, and then make the car speed up, slow down, etc., etc. There are so many surfaces. There's all this electronic thing. The blipper for the car, to open it, to unlock it, the air conditioning, everything. In 2012, we moved to the next stage. And Charlie Miller from ex-NSA, and the good thing about the NSA, and let me just say this right now, I love the NSA because on one hand, they are recording every single thing that you do on the phone or on the internet. And the good thing about that is that if you accidentally delete an email, you can ring up the NSA in America and ask them what it was. The trouble is I can't seem to find their phone number. And this other guy here, who was with a commercial company, they applied to DARPA. Now, you've heard of DARPA. They invented the Internet Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, who gave them $80,000. And they bought 2 cars and then just spent a year tearing them down physically and electronically. Here is the Prius, torn down to pieces, and they could make the horn go, they could make it speed up and slow down and change direction and all sorts of stuff. And they could jerk the steering wheel, which is no problem if you're at low speed. It's a problem if you're travelling at highway speeds. And then things changed in 2015. So the range changed. Back in 2011, they could only bust into your car if they were sitting in the back seat with a computer behind you, and only if it was a Prius or the Ford Escape, and if they had a cable 1 metre long going into the mechanic diagnostic port. So you take your car into the service station and they plug a cable in and they say, oh, spark plugs are good, blah, 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 blah. So they could, if they were sitting in the back seat, that was the only way that these guys could take over your car. But then, a little bit more work, they found a flaw in the system of the Fiat Chryslers, and they could do it via Wi-Fi within 25 metres of you. Then they found another flaw, that if they were on the same mobile phone tower in America's Sprint, so anywhere between 25 kilometres, and then from the internet anywhere in the world, they could bust into your Fiat Chrysler or any other car. And so, a few months ago, Andy Greenberg went for a drive, and while we're fully organised, let me point out, they did not put anything in his car. It was just a regular car, and they said, go for a drive. We'll find you. We'll find you. Just so you know, we're doing it to you. And so he's driving down the road, and then suddenly the radio volume goes up, and it changed channel to hip-hop because he hated hip-hop. Then the volume came up, more wind, temperature change, and then on the display screen of the radio, their faces appeared. The wipers came on, the windscreen wipers, and then started playing with the brakes and the accelerator and everything. And here is the guys actually doing it to him from anywhere in the world, in this case only 10 kilometres away, because they wanted to make sure they were on the same cell phone network so they could call him, he could call them if things went messy. Yes, they killed a Jeep on the highway with me in it. And here you can see the headline, the Fiat Chrysler connected car bug lets hackers take over Jeep remotely. This is what a Jeep should look like. Here it is, having run off the road. See what's in front of the car? See that big dent in the road, in the grass? They hit it at speed. And he talks about it. And now they can do it anywhere, from anywhere in the world. And all they need is this kit. See that little black box? That's it. Battery powered. They can take over most cars if they have the time to understand it. The United States released a declaration that they had to get rid of this. They had to repair the 1.4 million cars. There's a recall over the hacking. It's real. Anybody here got a Range Rover? Sure, we can play with your doors, anything you like. And so you've got semi-trailers going down the road. Now, you don't call them semi-trailers, you call them Arctics, as in articulated vehicle. But in the United States, you call them an 18-wheeler. Is that right? Have I got the jargon right? Okay. And imagine if one of these is driving down the road and then suddenly one that's loaded with something inflammable, they all suddenly turn right at high speed. This is the world that we're living in. A few weeks ago, the American Food and Drug Administration told the hospitals to ditch these intravenous pumps. You can be there in a hospital, very sick, with liquid going into you, and people could increase or decrease the amount of chemotherapeutic agent, painkiller, antibiotic or fluid from anywhere in the world. None of these systems were designed with safety. And anything can be hacked. Your phone, your mobile phone can be hacked. And the most important thing on your phone, obviously, is the full set of selfies that you have. Selfies begin back with Leonardo da Vinci doing it in the painting form. A little bit later in the mirror. Look, come on, look. The geniuses do selfies. Here's one genius. Here's another genius. That's the Kim Kardashian with her buttocks. This is the first apparent photographic selfie and in 1839, and here's somebody doing it in 1924. We're doing it in space. The Opportunity rover took some selfies, and in the first selfie on the left, you can see that the solar cells are covered with dirt. Bad. Wind came up. Good. In March, clean. Pope Francis has done a selfie. And these guys here did a selfie at the Nelson Mandela Memorial Service. You had the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and of Denmark and some other dude. And notice that 3 people are happy and the 4th person is not happy on the extreme left. Maybe because we're at a Nelson Mandela, the God of Kindness Memorial Service, or maybe because she wasn't in the selfie, who knows. On the other hand, this is one of the most famous ones, the Ellen DeGeneres one. And here is my Meta double selfie. That's me there with half a beard as I was in first year medical school. The word selfie itself was named in 2013 as the Oxford English Dictionary Word of the Year because they pick as their word of the year a word that has attracted a great deal of interest during that year. And they had these surveys over the web and everywhere else finding that the frequency of the word selfie in the English language increased by how much? 17,000%. Now, let me point out very carefully that 17,000%. I want you to remember that number for a bit of a while. So here's a summary. It increased by 17,600%. If you round up 17,600, don't you get 18,000? Oh, these people with words, they're no good with numbers. Anyway, but they were right with one thing. They said that the selfie dates back to a 2002 Australian online forum. And by a coincidence, I come from Australia. And so on this forum, a man called Hopi, really Nathan Hope, but we Australians are very lazy. We shorten everything down, get rid of everything that we can, and just put a Y on the end. And here he is talking about the fact that he's had a problem with some stitches in his mouth, and they're hurting, and they say, look, hey, come on, why did you have stitches put in your mouth? And then he posted this photograph, and then he said, at 3:19 p.m. and 29 seconds on the 13th of September 2002, drunk at a mate's 21st, I tripped over and landed lip first with the front teeth coming a very close second on a set of steps. I had a hole about 1 centimetre long through my bottom lip. And then he said this sentence. Sorry about the focus. It was a selfie. And that was the first time in the history of the universe that the word selfie got written down anywhere on this homepage belonging to K2. Who's K2? Oh, me. Oh, shucks, I didn't even know. Oh. Everybody's taking selfies. The astronauts are taking selfies of themselves. So let me talk to you about an important thing. The concept of a moonshot. We've got some sound coming through, Dr. Jeff.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and...
So, a concept of a moonshot in physical, economic terms is that a country spends hundreds of billions of dollars in a decade or more on a single project. So the United States moonshot was an example of that. And when he said that, they had a total of 16 minutes of space experience. They had not even done a single loop around the Earth, and the payoff was tremendous. $137 back for every dollar that they put in. They invented the integrated circuit, which gave us the computer of today, and they became a world leader in technology until recently they began to fall over. And 8 years ago, they did a genetic moonshot, put $4 billion in, got $800 billion back, 200-to-1 investment. So people think that these moonshots, where you have a big project and you do decades or more, is a good payoff. There's the brain mapping moonshot happening right now. And there's a country in the world that has got 4 moonshots in its plans. That country is China. They're to deal with transport, genetic engineering, becoming the greenest nation on Earth, and the electric car. Let me run through them one at a time. They want to do everything from buses to trains to space travel. They've launched astronauts. They've done a soft landing on the moon. They've got a bit of a space station going. They're going to have a proper one going. They intend to bring moon rocks back in 2017. They intend to have a human walk on the moon in 2025 and bring them back. Right now, the Americans cannot even put a human into space. They have to pay the Russians, it used to be $20 million per head taxi fare, but then the Russians discovered capitalism, and now it's $70 million. They're doing all sorts of transportation everywhere, in all fields, on the buses and the trains. They've got the world's largest high-speed train network. More people every day catch a high-speed train in China than in the whole of the United States do people catch an aeroplane. So much better for the environment, so much cheaper, $30 a head. Here's a high-speed train. Anybody been on a high-speed train? It's a wonderful thing to go on. I've been on it just before we got up to full speed of 450 kilometres per hour. Here's a train, a Chinese train, in Madrid. They've taken a train all the way across. And the advantage of this is that it's quicker and it has fewer emissions. And they intend to run a high-speed train to London at some stage. They're working at it. Take time. They have the world's longest high-speed rail network, nearly 2,300 kilometres long. Okay, let's forget transport. Let's talk about genetic engineering. They do all the regular human genetics that we're doing, and they've already learned how to, just for fun, engineer a cow to give human breast milk. They've done that. And they were the first people in April the 20th this year to do CRISPR. CRISPR sounds complicated. Let me put it to you in plain language. With CRISPR, I can get a little dog like this, a Chihuahua, and do stuff to it, and over a period of months turn it into a Rottweiler. With CRISPR, if you've got a child who has cystic fibrosis, I can snip out the cystic fibrosis genes. And you think, hang on, aren't there problems? Yes. Suppose you want to have bigger muscles, different eye colour, different hair colour, smaller waist, bigger waist, whatever you want, you can do with CRISPR. The Chinese have failed. There's a Chinese saying, fall 8 times, get up 9 times, which doesn't make sense because if you fall down 8 times, you only have to get up 8 times, but I think there's a metaphor in there that you climb up the 9th time and then fly to the heavens. And they're also mapping all varieties of rice that are known. And you think about, well, what's the big deal about rice? Well, 30% of the world's calories come from it. In the 1970s, there was the rice Grassy Stunt virus. You've never heard of it. Nobody's heard of it, unless you do biodiversity. And they tested, it was attacking all the rice on Earth. Literally, almost. Metaphorically, then, okay, metaphorically. And they tested all these varieties of rice, and the number of resistant varieties of rice in the whole world was 1. Had they not found that one variety of rice, there would be no rice left. How could you have Indian food with, I don't know. It had been known to science in India since 1966. And so the Chinese are now mapping all of the rice. So if something attacks their rice, they can do something about it. That's their genetic side. The green side, they want to become the greenest nation on earth. You might not know it by reading the Daily Mail. I read the Daily Mail for the first time. It's an interesting paper. I have made the front page of the Daily Mail twice in the internet version. Firstly, at the Kanye West concert, where I was really rocking it with my dancing moves. And secondly, with my interaction with Lady Gaga, when she interacted with me twice from the stage and called me Yellow Pants. I love the Daily Mail. And so you won't find this by reading the Daily Mail, but since 2013, of all the electrical generating capacity that's being installed in China, more is renewable than is coal. Right? They want to become the first ecological civilization, and every 3 months they push the goals harder and harder and higher. And this is why. The dirty air. Not just because the dirty air makes things bad, because it can kill people. So let's just talk about the money side of it. Subsidies, right? In 2014, the world as a whole, as a single unit, earned $70 trillion. The fossil fuel industry got not subsidies, they're called investments of 5.65 trillion, which is 8%. So let me just get this straight. The fossil fuel industry is making a huge profit. When was the last time you saw a fossil fuel company at your local primary school with a cake stall on a Saturday morning to organise money, right? They're making huge profits. They're causing global warming. They're killing people with dirty air. And on top of that, For every dollar that is mentioned, that is earned, they get 8 cents on top of all of the damage they're causing. Whereas renewable energy, they don't get investments, they get a subsidy of 0.05. Is it business as usual? Why is this happening? We don't know. We don't know. It's happening, it's wrong. And let me introduce you to an economic term, hidden externalities. Drop in lifespan in northern China. And here's a scientific paper, evidence on the impact of sustained exposure to air on life expectancy. Here's the abstract. And the abstract says, this policy in China that increases the total suspended particles, so they're PM 2.5s, PM 210s, look them up in the web, is causing something. What on earth is it causing? It's causing the 500 million, that's 500 million people to lose something. And what are they losing? They are losing 5 years of their life. 2.5 billion life years of life expectancy. Okay, let's look at the United States first, then come back. In the United States, we've got carbon dioxide, which we know is causing global warming. The dirty air is also causing, when you burn anything, it's also causing 25,000 deaths a year. Who is paying for the hospital costs and compensation to the families and to those people? Is it the people who are creating the pollution? No. Therefore, it's called a hidden externality. In China, the same situation, and the economic burden upon the country as a whole unit is too great, and that's one of the reasons, just pure economics, that they are going to become the greenest nation on earth. Now, there are a few things, like the democracy thing, but Abraham Lincoln got it right. He said, you can fool all of the people some of the time, and you can fool some of the people all the time, but if you can fool half the people one day every 4 years, you've got a democracy. And their fourth one is the electric car. Now, by a coincidence, the electric car, which uses about 20 kilowatt hours per day, also uses the same amount of energy that it takes to run a house. Run a house for a day, run a car for a day, 20 kilowatt hours. And their dream is that they'll have these cars married to the grid. The car's only driving for an hour or two each day. And so the rest of the time it's either sucking electricity from the grid or giving it back. And the Chinese want to have, within 10 years, 100 million cars, electric cars. Let me just point out the significance of that to you. In the car industry, which I love to pieces, they make what they call 60 million units or cars a year. 60 million. The Chinese are not going to make 10,000. They're going to make 100 million. And they will, because they don't have to worry about the democracy thing. Now, it's not just China that's doing moonshots. You, Britons, are also involved in a moonshot. With us, in Australia, and with the friends in Europe and in the United States. And since the year 2003, together, all of us, we have poured $4 trillion into this moonshot to bring peace and democracy to Iraq and Afghanistan. That's 12 years. 12 years has got 4,000 days. 4,000 days, $4,000 billion, $1 billion a day is what we're spending on bringing peace and democracy, and we've been doing it since 2003. For $1 billion, you either get a baby health centre, and then the GPs, and then the small hospitals, and then the big hospitals where you can get everything done, or for $1 billion, you get the baby jails and the kindergartens and the primary schools and the high schools and the universities. And if we had done this all around the world, we would be Santa Claus and everybody would love us. I can see, where's Deborah? We're 8 minutes past the hour, so I'll just stop right there right now and open up for questions. So thank you very much.